Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible stories of leadership transition you'll ever find. It's a story about a kingdom at a tipping point, a king who's been rejected by God, and the hunt for his replacement. But you know, this search isn't going to lead to a palace or some fancy war room. No, it ends in a field with a bunch of sheep.
And this whole saga really boils down to one massive question. What does God look for in a leader? Is it power? Is it experience on the battlefield? A royal family tree? Well, as we're about to find out, this story just throws all of those human expectations right out the window and gives us a completely different playbook.
All right, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to walk through 5 key chapters. We'll start with a secret anointing, then get to that legendary fight with a giant. After that, we'll see how friendship and jealousy collide, watch a king turn into a hunter, and end with a powerful pact between 2 friends.
So, our story kicks off here in 1 Samuel chapter 16. God has made it official. King Saul is out. His disobedience has cost him the kingdom. So God sends the prophet Samuel on this top-secret mission to Bethlehem. His job? Find a man named Jesse and anoint one of his sons as the next king.
Okay, so Samuel gets to Bethlehem, and Jesse starts parading his sons out one by one. And these guys look the part. They're tall, they're strong, they look like kings. But with each one that steps forward, God tells Samuel, nope, not him. One after another, 7 sons, 7 rejections. Samuel is baffled, and he finally has to ask, you sure these are all the sons you have? It's only then that Jesse's like, oh, well, there's the youngest, David. He's out with the sheep. They call him in, and the second Samuel lays eyes on him, God says, that's him. Get up and anoint him. He's the one.
And right here, we get the master key, the principle that unlocks this whole story. As that very first, very impressive son walked by, God told Samuel this exact line. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. See, we get impressed by the resume, the height, the charisma. But God was looking right past all of that, searching for something invisible to the human eye, the heart of a king.
The moment that anointing oil hits David's head, there's this huge spiritual shift. The Spirit of the Lord rushes upon David, getting him ready for what's to come. And at the very same time, that spirit leaves King Saul, who then starts getting tormented by what the Bible calls an evil spirit. And what's the solution his advisors come up with? Find a musician. And wouldn't you know it, the best musician they can find is a young guy from Bethlehem who's great with the harp. Yep, it's David. The newly anointed king is brought in to soothe the rejected one.
So David's music gets him into the palace. But it's in chapter 17 where we see what his heart is really made of. The scene changes to a battlefield. The army of Israel is squared off against their biggest enemy, the Philistines. And for 40 days they've been totally frozen, paralyzed with fear because of one guy, their champion, Goliath.
I mean, just look at this matchup. It's almost funny. On one side, you've got Goliath. He's basically a walking tank, covered in bronze and iron, the absolute peak of human warfare. He's cocky, and he's openly mocking Israel's God. And on the other side, you've got David, a shepherd kid who was just sent to bring some snacks to his brothers. He actually turns down the king's armor because it's too clunky, and comes armed with a sling, a few rocks, and this absolutely unshakable faith. This is David's big speech, and it tells you everything you need to know. He's not putting his trust in his aim. He's reframing the whole situation. He's saying, this isn't a fight between me and you. This is a fight between the living God and you. David sees himself as just an instrument, because at the end of the day, he says, the battle is the Lord's.
So the big takeaway here is that David's courage wasn't about not being afraid. It was about perspective. The entire army of Israel looked at Goliath and saw an obstacle they couldn't possibly overcome. David looked at Goliath and saw a man who was picking a fight with an all-powerful God. He saw the battle from God's perspective, and that changed everything.
David's life is completely turned upside down after that victory. In chapter 18, he's pulled into the royal inner circle for good. And there, he runs smack into 2 new, incredibly powerful forces. The first is a beautiful thing, the deep, loyal friendship of the king's own son, Jonathan. The second, not so much. It's the dark, twisted jealousy of King Saul himself.
As the army marches home victorious, the women of Israel start singing this song. And it's a catchy tune, but for a deeply insecure king like Saul, these lyrics are pure poison. He hears them giving 10 times more credit to this young upstart than to him, the king. And you can just see the gears turning in his head as he thinks, What's next for him? The kingdom? And check out how fast things spiral out of control. One day, it's just suspicion, a dirty look. The very next day, it's attempted murder, as Saul literally throws a spear at David's head while he's playing the harp. When that doesn't work, he starts scheming, trying to use military missions and even marriage as clever ways to get David killed by the Philistines.
And this is just a gut punch of a lesson, isn't it? Saul, the king, the one person who should have been David's biggest champion and protector, he becomes his most dangerous enemy. It's a terrifying look at how jealousy, when you let it run wild, doesn't just make you bitter, it can completely corrupt you and turn you into the very thing you're supposed to be fighting against.
By the time we get to chapter 19, Saul isn't even hiding it anymore. What was a private obsession is now a public order. He openly tells his own son Jonathan and all his officials, "I want David dead." Just like that, David becomes a wanted man, and anyone who dares to help him is putting their own neck on the line. But as Saul's manhunt kicks off, something amazing happens. A network of protection just forms around David. The king's own kids turn on him. Jonathan risks his father's wrath to warn David. His wife, Michal, tricks the king's soldiers so he can escape. The prophet Samuel gives him a place to hide. But the ultimate shield is God himself. When Saul's men, and later Saul himself, finally track David down, the Spirit of God literally overwhelms them, and they're completely unable to lay a hand on him.
And this shows us something really important about how God's protection, his providence, works. It isn't always some supernatural miracle out of the blue. So often, it works through the brave, loyal actions of regular people, friends, spouses, mentors, who are willing to do the right thing no matter the cost.
And that brings us to chapter 20. David is deep in hiding now. He's absolutely convinced Saul is going to kill him, but his friend Jonathan, the prince, is still holding on to a tiny sliver of hope that his father can be reasoned with. So they come up with a plan for one final secret test to find out what Saul's intentions are, once and for all.
The plan is brilliant, really. David stays away from a royal festival. When the king asks where he is, Jonathan will make up an excuse. Saul's reaction will tell them everything. Well, reaction is an understatement. It's a full-blown explosion. Saul gets so angry, so full of rage, he accuses his own son of being a traitor and throws a spear right at him. The test is over. The next day, Jonathan goes out to the field and fires his arrows past the servant boy. The signal. It means it's not safe. David has to run.
After the signal, the two friends meet one last time. It's just a tragic, tear-filled goodbye. And in this moment, they reaffirm their covenant. Now, this is way more than a promise. It's a sacred oath, sworn before God, tying their families together in loyalty forever. They're declaring that their bond, their friendship, is more powerful and will last longer than the king's hate. So as we zoom out and look at the whole story so far, you can see these major themes just popping out. God's choice of a leader is all about the heart, not what you see on the outside. Real faith can conquer any fear. We see this brutal clash between selfless loyalty and the cancer of jealousy. And through it all, we see God's plan moving forward, protected by both human courage and divine power.
And that kind of leaves us with a question to chew on, doesn't it? We all have our own giants to face, those impossible situations, those overwhelming fears. This story really makes you ask yourself, when you go up against them, what are you relying on? Are you trying to wear someone else's armor, trusting in a job title or other people's approval or some external solution? Or are you learning to tap into that unseen strength that comes from a heart that's aligned with something much, much bigger than yourself?